Hello, everyone. I am here to talk about one of my favorite cities anywhere. Let me make sure we got a good view of this. So here we are, full screen of this. I'm talking about Belgrade, which to me is the capital of cool in Eastern Europe. From cobblestones to cool cafes, it's got something for everyone. Now, if you're wondering where this place is, Belgrade, Serbia, I don't know where it is. I'm going to let you in on that. And I'm also going to let you in on what makes this such a fantastic part of the world to travel to. Got a lot of things going for it, and I will get to that in just a little bit. So, as I say, I mean, I was a dad in a former life. I think the way I joke around with things, but Belgrade makes the grade. It really does make a grade as far as I'm concerned in terms of it gets grade A for me because there are lots of things to do there. Riverside cafes, fortress views, nightlife that, from what I understand, goes all night long if you choose to do something like that. And it's just really exciting. Lots of things. The picture you have in the background here, this is one of the local foods. I mean, bread is bread, but this on here, I'm going to be talking about food later in this presentation. This is a local spread called Ivar, and it's made mostly from roasted red peppers, roasted garlic, and it goes so well on some of the local breads. So that's things you get to look forward to further along in my presentation here. So who am I? I am Brooke, if you don't know me. And it's funny because there's a picture of me from a couple of years ago, and I'm wearing that same sweatshirt right now. So I was just realizing that as I was doing this. But I own a company called I'm Out of Here Travel, bespoke travel planning company. So I like planning travel. I like getting people to see parts of the world that they otherwise might not get to. So it's just super exciting for me to help people find their new wow moments in travel. And like I say, I visited all 50 states. I visited 34 countries. Recently got to number 34 when I went to Doha a few months ago. And as someone who grew up during the Cold War, I really, really enjoy going to former Soviet countries and see how they've rebuilt themselves and are continuing to thrive after they've gained independence. And this is one of them right here. So it's right up my alley. So if you're wondering where the heck this place is, here's a map to give you some idea of where it is. So it's zoomed out quite a bit. It's this little red area right here in Serbia. That's Belgrade, which is the capital of Serbia right there. It's the biggest city in Serbia, and you can see what else is around it just to give you kind of a roadmap, quite literally, of things. It's in the middle of southeastern Europe. You have Bosnia here, you have Croatia down the coast here, you have Greece. Istanbul is right here in Turkey, and then farther over here you have Berlin. So that gives you kind of a rough idea of where it is. Southeastern Europe, part of the former Yugoslavia, gained independence in the past couple of decades. And if you're wondering how to fly there, if you're American, I'm American. So if you're wondering how to fly there, New York and Chicago actually had direct flights to Belgrade as of a few days ago when I checked. If you're watching this 6 months from now, things might have changed, but that's how that works out. And if you're not in one of those cities, no big deal. Just like when you're flying to anywhere, you can get a connection that will get you there. In fact, it might be a good way to link together a couple of different cities in a trip. So why is Belgrade so exciting? Belgrade is super exciting to me. Like I said a couple minutes ago, it has something for everyone. So I've been to Belgrade a couple times. When I first went to Belgrade back 10 years ago, all I had heard was that it was famous for its nightlife. And to be honest, I'm not huge into nightlife, so I was thinking, oh, this isn't going to be a big deal. But we were doing a round trip, if you will, through several cities in former Yugoslavia in that area. And even though, Belgrade was known for its nightlife, I thought, well, I'll give it a few days just to check it out. I have to say that I was sad to leave at the end of that because it's so much more than its nightlife. The nightlife can involve live music. That's my first point there. But the nightlife can also involve just sitting in a tavern, having a couple drinks, or it can be, a bump and club with a modern music, all sorts of things like that. Another thing, nightlife wise, I don't know if anyone has seen this, but along the rivers around Belgrade, there are like small boats, barges up along the sides of the river that actually are nightclubs. And it's funny because some of them have facades just stuck on them to look like pirate ships and things like that. But when you get in, it's just a plain basic boat. Anyway, it's a nightclub, and I haven't tried those out, but maybe I will next time. Live music is everywhere. You can have it in the restaurants, taverns, cafes, and also sometimes you have some musicians just wandering the street, which is fun. It's usually traditional music from the area, but it's still very lively and fun. So another point that I'm going to get into in a little bit, because I know so much of us travel for food. I'm not alone in that, right? I mean, I love food. Lots of people love food. And you can really get to know a culture by tasting and studying the types of cuisine they have. Well, Belgrade in Serbia has delicious cuisine. That goes without saying. I'm going to show you a little bit coming up. Cafe and restaurant scene, there are lots of them. And also to that point, over the past couple of years, Belgrade has developed a lot of international restaurants. Whereas initially, as I recall, one of the first times I went there, it was a lot of Serbian food without a whole lot of variety, which is fine. But if you wanted variety, you were kind of at a loss. But now I'm finding Italian restaurants, French restaurants, Greek restaurants, all of Europe and more is represented in Belgrade. So you can pretty much get what you want at that point. Green spaces, there are parks all over the place. There are several larger parks. In fact, this backdrop here is part of the next point is part of the Kalemegdan Fortress. So this fortress is actually an ancient fortress that has been there for a very long time, and it has a park around and inside it. That's going to be coming up a little bit later too. That is one of the major green spaces in the city, but not the only one. Good thing about these green spaces is they often have great places to sit and picnic benches, things like that. So you can just sit and relax there. You can bring food, you can bring coffee, any other drink you want, you can have that as well. So the next point below that is the Kalemegdan Fortress, otherwise known as the Belgrade Fortress. And this was built long ago because the city of Belgrade is actually at the confluence of two rivers, the Danube on one side and the Sava River on the other side. So you have these two rivers coming together, and Belgrade had a very important defending the land behind it. Therefore, the fortress at the point where these two rivers come together. And like I said, a lot of it is still intact. You can go around and explore it. There are some parts that are kind of falling apart, and you'll see signs all over the place near those saying climb at your own risk. In fact, I think they're more blunt than that. They might say climb at risk of death. You know, you got to be really, really blunt. But there are several places that are not like that, so you can explore it on foot a little too. There are several churches in Belgrade. Belgrade's churches are of the Eastern Orthodox style primarily. And so if you're not familiar with that, it may be slightly different architecture. St. Sava's Church is the biggest Eastern Orthodox church in Serbia, and it's one of the biggest churches in the Eastern Europe side too. And it's very beautiful. I have a story about that when I'll get to it when I show you the slide of St. Sava's Church. And lastly, great exchange rate for Americans. Now, the last I looked, which was yesterday, it was 100 Serbian dinar to $1, which it's a lot, 100 to 1. I would give you a word of warning, though, having done a lot of traveling to a variety of countries, that just because the ratio is big like that doesn't necessarily mean things will be cheap for us, because some countries, I'm looking at you, Turkey, I was just there a little bit ago. Some countries will have what looks like a great exchange rate for Americans on paper, but the prices are adjusted over in the other country so that it's almost as expensive as you'd pay in the US. So far, that hasn't happened to Belgrade, and I hope that Belgrade never gets that memo, because it's just a great place to be, very affordable, and you can have a really good time there. First thing from my list that I'm going to talk about is the Belgrade Fortress, otherwise known as Kalemegdan, and public space. And like I said, it's a public space that's surrounded by lots of greenery. This is just a little walkway entering the fortress itself. But if you were to wander around the fortress, there's a whole wall around the outside, hence fortress. And depending on where you are, because it's up on a hill, some of it you can sit on and look out over the rivers. You can have a nice view. So you can look at the river. On the other side of the river is what they call Novi Beograd. I I think I'm remembering that right. That's New Belgrade, which is the more side of the city. It has more high rises and such. So you can get a view of that. You can get a view of the river, and it's just a nice place to relax. Like I said, lots of picnic areas there, so you can go and get your food and bring it over and just enjoy it there. I talked about the views that you can get of the city skyline. Couple other things there. It's the fortress. You can walk around, of course. They say at your own risk, but there are plenty of places you can walk through without problems. There are also a couple of small museums around too. Like for instance, I remember a military museum that's on site, and the museums come at a small fee. Walking around the fortress, being in the park does not have a cost at all, which is fantastic. But there are a couple of small museums. They're not that expensive, so that's something else you can look at when you're there. Food. I told you we'd get to food. Here we are talking about food. Serbian food is delicious. It truly is. If you haven't had food from this part of the world before, it is very meat heavy, I'll be honest. I know that there was one point where my husband and I went on a walking tour the first time we were there, and the tour guide just kind of shrugged and said, if you're a vegetarian, I'm sorry, this is just how it is here. Luckily, now we have a lot of other options for restaurants that you can go to. But at the time, it was like, hey, you gotta like meat, or you're not going to have much to eat. But several of the things that are meat heavy, but also very good. Chivapi, traditional grilled meat. I have a picture of that on the next slide. This is like it's kind of like shaped like small sausages, but instead of being a sausage, it's a sausage-shaped patty that they toss on the grill. And these are often served just on a plate by themselves or in sandwiches with sauces, things like that. Cevapi are popular all throughout the Balkan regions. So I had them in Bosnia, I've had them in Croatia as well. So you'll find them all over the place there. And then this one, hopefully I get this pronunciation right. I try to slow it down. This is the one that's in the background. Karađorđeva šnikla. I think I came pretty darn close to that. So it's a deep fried cheese and meat roll. Again, it is meat, and it's meat rolled with cheese in between. And as I recall, this is a very delicious thing if you're into that sort of thing. There are a couple other things that do may or may not have meat involved in them going farther down. Savory phyllo pies. There are a lot of these that are more vegetable or vegetarian based. So the phyllo dough, you know, that really crackly one when you cut into it. These can be stuffed with potatoes and onions, so that would be a vegetarian item. Some of them are stuffed with cheese. There are some that have meats in it, but that's just another option for something that's different. Going down to the point in the list, Ivar. This was on the picture a few slides ago, the roasted red pepper and garlic dip, or rather, maybe better put, roasted red pepper and garlic puree. They commonly spread it on bread, like I had in the picture there. In fact, one of my favorite restaurants from Belgrade has this fantastic appetizer that if you're there, you have to try. They come out with a house-made container of Ivar, and then they have this house-made bread that's roasted with Parmesan over the top, and of course you put the two of them together, and oh, this is something I could probably eat every day when I'm there, and maybe I have, I don't know, but this is just something that's very delicious. Now, when it comes to Ivar, some of us, like here, we have Eastern European markets. You might go to one of those markets if you live near one, and you see Ivar by the jar. Ivar by the jar. So you'll see it in the canned and jarred section. I would recommend that you don't try that and make your opinion based on that. Because in my opinion, the house-made ones are a million times more tasty than the ones in the jar that have been sitting there for who knows how long, right? So just something to keep in mind. So if you've tried jarred and canned Ivar, make sure you try it fresh before forming your opinion. The last thing is called Rakia. It's a local plum brandy, or shall I say fruit brandy. The plum variety is the most popular one, but there are other varieties of rakia too. They make it with grapes, they make it with peaches, they make it with apples, all sorts of things. So they pretty much make it with every single variety of fruit. They all have slightly different flavors, and it is an alcoholic beverage, and it's sold generally in small glasses, small cups. It's not super high alcohol though. So that's kind of nice about that. You can actually taste it and not feel like it's ruining your day. But that's another thing that they have there. Couple pictures here. Ivar, that is a better version of the picture I had earlier. The bread with a spread on top, and oh, it is so wonderful. That's the kshavapi. Like I said, they're like little, almost sausage-shaped pieces, but they aren't sausage flavored. They're just pieces of grilled meat like that. Like I was saying, sometimes they're served on a plate, maybe with some sliced vegetables on the side, like sliced tomatoes and things like that. Sometimes they put it in a pita, so you'll have a pita that's split open with some of this in there, maybe against some sliced tomatoes and onions, and a sour cream like sauce on top. That's pretty darn good too. So the last thing I have here, I have little shot glasses of our rakia. And if you're not someone who's heavy into drinking, I'm not heavy into drinking alcohol. I hardly ever do it. But I have to say, whenever I go to a new country and they say, this is our local spirit, I take a taste of it. There are plenty of them that I've taken a taste of and I say, no, thank you, because they taste kind of like motor oil. This one is actually, I think, one of the better local spirits I've tried. It's light and fruity. So if you're into those things, this might be something to enjoy either during the day or nightlife, in the taverns, what have you. This is one of the really fun neighborhoods in Belgrade. Most of the neighborhoods have some sort of character to them, but this one has the cobblestone streets. It's lined with restaurants and cafes, a little bit of art galleries too, some stores, but it's mostly restaurants. At one end there's a fountain, at the other side there's a sculpture, and it's just where the life really happens at night, especially late at night. It's near the main city square, so it's very centrally located. The taverns, like I say, have traditional food, traditional drinks, and live music. There are some of the restaurants that you're just sitting there eating, and there's like a three-person band coming around, the accordion and one of the horns and one of the stringed instrument players, just all around things like that. So it's super fun. There's lots of energy there. And I have to say, the dinner hour in this part of the world, you've probably been places where dinner, or have heard of places where dinner is relatively late. The first time we went to Belgrade back in 2015, we'd been on a long train ride from Zagreb, so it had been a long way on the train. Then we got in and checked in and all that stuff. We didn't actually get out to here for dinner until about 8:30 or 9. We were thinking, wow, that's late. Well, much to our surprise and amusement, I guess, people were still coming in for dinner around 10:30 or 10:45 as we were finishing up. So they have kind of a late shifted schedule there, and it is okay. That's where some of the nightlife and magic happens. Now, the funny thing about this, or maybe not so funny, maybe you kind of assume this, it's really lively at night. During the day, it's fairly quiet. At night, it's not, you don't see it in this picture, but at night, there's lots of people wandering around generally. During the during the day, not so much. So it's just an interesting contrast. So here in the background is a picture of St. Sava's Church. Like I said, this is one of the biggest churches in all of Eastern Europe. It's beautiful. There are some other churches and cathedrals around town too, but this is the major one. And just to point this out before I get into the description, if you're in Belgrade for a few days and you'd like to go to the Kalemegdan Fortress and you'd like to go to St. Sava's Church, they're linked fairly by one road. So it's just one road, one of them at either end. It's about 2 miles from one to the other. So it's something that is definitely walkable and doable. So you don't have to rent a car for this. You can just be on foot for the whole time. And it's a nice walk too. So if you're someone who says 2 miles, that sounds long, I might get tired, there are cafes along the way. There are plenty of places to sit and take a break while you're making your way down. And even if you aren't tired, it's kind of fun to stop in and see some of those places. So we have a lot of Eastern Orthodox style here, domes, frescoes on the inside, stonework. Interesting thing about this particular church that's in this picture, it was starting at the very beginning, starting to be built before World War One, long, long ago. When Serbia became Soviet occupied, of course, the Soviets said, religion, no, we aren't going to do this. And so the Soviets said, okay, you're going to stop any construction on this church. So this church remained kind of a shell, stagnant for a long, long time. Then Serbia gained independence in the last couple decades, but when they became independent, there wasn't quite the money to rebuild it again. So, fundraising, blah, blah, blah. Then when they finally got the money, they started doing the outside a little bit more. When I was there in 2015, the outside was finished, but the inside was not. So that was interesting. They were still working on that in 2015. Since then, they've completed the inside, and I really want to go back and see the inside. I have not been able to see the inside yet, but this is complete and ready for viewing at any time. So there are other churches along the way too, like along that road between the two things I was just talking about. There's another one called St. Mark's Church. It's smaller. That doesn't mean it's any worse or better. It's just smaller in a different style. You can stop by and look at that too. I have a picture of that coming up, but for now, I'm going to move on to something else that Belgrade is known for, and that is festivals of all sorts. You, depending on who you are, you may be familiar with Eastern Europe having a lot of music festivals, and that's kind of what we got up here. We have all these people down here in the audience, and you have all the lights, and you have a stage that's probably going to have some bands on there, and that's a big deal, a music festival, right? But that's not the only thing there. So if you're thinking, yeah, these festivals aren't for me, I'm not into big crowds and loud music and things like that, there's lots of other things you can do too. So down here is a picture from a folk festival that you can go to. There are folk dancing festivals, there are dancing festivals even, film festivals, music, like I was talking about, of different kinds of music, design events, art festivals, things like that. So the list of festivals in this part of the world is never ending. So that might be something, if you're into that sort of thing, you can plan a trip around that. So if you're thinking about going to Belgrade, you probably aren't going to just go to Belgrade. I would recommend combining it with something around. Earlier, I said if you don't get a direct flight from the US, you may have a layover somewhere, and that's somewhere you can just extend that layover a little bit longer and check out another city that way. But if you need ideas, here are some places that you can combine with Belgrade. It's easy to link in by train or a flight or rental car or getting a car hire, getting someone to take you around. So there's lots of ways you can get around. Here are some ideas, and I tried to find a variety of things too, not all the same thing. So within Serbia, the city of Niš, which is one of the smaller cities, but a city nonetheless, has a lot of Roman ruins. So if you're really into history, that might be some place to go. Another city that is kind of engulfed in history is the city of Sarajevo in Bosnia. I call it a unique blend of Ottoman and Western culture, and it's true. So the top picture over here is one of the main central areas of Sarajevo. You have this walking path here. You have some shops and restaurants along here. The this side of it looks more like an Ottoman style, almost Turkish style market. But then there's almost a line of demarcation in the middle of the city where it changes styles and becomes more Austro-Hungarian, more the refined European style, if you will. So it's interesting how it has both of those there. Sarajevo was a major part of the battles during the Balkan War, and there's a lot of interesting history there as well about that. And I took a couple really interesting tours there too. So highly recommended if you're into learning about that part of its history, that part of the region's history. Um, and then Plitvice National Park is in Croatia. This bottom picture is exactly of that. If you have not heard or seen this before, this is definitely a place to go. Before my 2015 trip, that was one of the things I had on my bucket list, if you want to call it that, that I really wanted to go to at some point, and I was so excited to be able to go. I was sorry to leave because it was like achieving one of my life's goals. So what this is, you can see there's a waterfall in the background. You can see the clear water. It's most of the water isn't that deep. There's lots of forestry around, lots of rock walls. And so it's just a place full of waterfalls, greenery, and these wooden pathways that you can walk between and among them all. It's one of the best national parks I've ever been to, so I highly recommend going there. Now, if you wanted to go to Plitvice, it is about an hour drive from Zagreb. Zagreb is the capital city of Croatia, so you should be able to get to Zagreb from any of these locations, including Belgrade, and then you can either get some sort of transportation or rent your own car and drive there. We rented a car when we did it, and it was a fantastic experience. Another place that has some nature with a little bit more of a town vibe, whereas the national park is just completely nature. The coasts of Montenegro and Croatia. Um, so main city on the Croatian coast, you may be familiar with this, Dubrovnik, where the Game of Thrones was filmed. It is another fantastic city with a that's fortified with a wall around the outside, so you can explore all the ruins pretty much in the town. So that's a wonderful place to go to. Split is up the coast a little bit. It also has a whole part of the town that's Roman ruins. So those are the largest cities there. They have all that you would need. There's lots of places to stay, lots of restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. But also, if you're able to, it's nice to rent a car. It's easy to rent a car there. It's easy to drive there. No worries. We've done it. And you can just drive up and down and see the small towns along the coast too. The ones where they're just maybe the cafe and the little marina. They're very, very nice. So they're quaint, they're seaside. And then there are larger cities that are also by the sea, but a little bit more industrial. The last thing I have on the list is one of, I feel like I keep saying everything is one of my favorite cities in the world, but I mean, I love this part of the world too. Like I said up top, I'm really into former Soviet areas. So Budapest is just a fantastic city. It's one of the bigger cities in that region of the world. It's the capital of Hungary. It's got lots of brilliant architecture, and it has some kind of fun, quirky sides to it as well. It has one part of the city that is a castle that is built with all this nice architecture around it. It's on the top of a hill. And if you have not seen the Hungarian Parliament building, it is so, so beautiful from the outside. So these are just ideas of places I would go combining with. Some of them are near, some of them are more or at more of a distance, but you can get to them all easily within an hour or maybe 2 hour flight, or more if you're driving. So those are just my ideas. Just a kind of collage of photos from this part of the world. You have some street art up here. Street art is becoming a big deal in so many cities, right? There's the picture of the rakia again. It has grapes in the background, so maybe this is a grape rakia. But anyway, it's made from all sorts of fruit. This here is the St. Mark's Church, which is partway. I don't know if exactly halfway, but partway between Columcille and St. Sava's Church. You can see that it's a kind of a different style and different color, but it's again very pretty to take pictures of and to look at. This is a picture. This top and bottom is the same picture that's split between two. That is of the shopping area. Shopping, that is one thing I did not talk about, and I get asked about shopping all the time. Just to let you know, Belgrade is a reasonably sized city. They have all the grocery stores that you would need. They have all the famous brands you'd want to. So there's a pedestrian only shopping area that is not far from Scadarlia Street. And the pedestrian area just has some local shops. It has all the world famous brands like the Zaras and the Mangoes and things like that. You'll also find things like pharmacies in that area. We occasionally need things like that. And then some local stores as well. So it's a fun place to see what is local and what's of the area. This is a minaret connected to one of the mosques nearby. This Funny thing about this is a picture that I took in 2015 when we went on that walking tour that I was talking about. In fact, the woman in the yellow shirt is the one that told us, if you're a vegetarian, I'm sorry. And we are underneath a statue in the main square. The main square of Belgrade is just simply called Republic Square. And it has in the middle one of these statues that has at the top, it's cut off in this picture, it has at the top a man riding on a horse and in one of these regal positions, as they always do. Now, according to all the locals, no one knows the name of the man that's on the statue. They just call it the man on the horse. So this is a common meeting place, this statue meeting in Republic Square. And apparently all the locals just say, let's meet at the horse, because they don't know the person's name on top. Kind of a funny little quirk. So here we are back to that meat and cheese deep fried thing that the name I cannot remember off the top of my head because it is long. Here we have down here, this was from 2015, picture I took of the interior of St. Sava's Church. You can see that things are wrapped up, still under construction. That is no longer the case. Last two pictures over here. want to talk about this, I didn't talk about hotels. Hotels are readily available. It's not a problem. This, however, is a historic hotel. This is called the Hotel Moskva or Hotel Moscow. It's where a lot of the famous dignitaries have stayed over the years. It's an old hotel and it has kind of a classy old style inside in the rooms as well. I have never stayed there. I've just walked in and looked. It does look nice. Nice in an old school way on the inside. It's fun to go in and check that out. You can rent rooms there now. They even if you aren't a famous dignitary or anything, and the rooms aren't super duper expensive. It's just a fun place to check out. This is also very close to that pedestrian shopping area I was just talking about a bit ago. So everything that is a major site, except for St. Sava's Church, I would say, is within just a 1 mile radius. It's very walkable. And so one more thing down here. This is the fortress overlooking either the Danube or the Sava River. I don't know which one it is. But here's a part of the Colomignan Fortress. You can see the walls here. You can walk up to the walls, have the view outside. So just so many things. There's so much variety in this city, right? There's walking tours, there's religious sites, there's food, there's shopping, there's classy old hotels, and like I said, I just love the place. So hopefully you have a reason now to go or to consider visiting Belgrade. There's so many things to see. So like I said at the top of this, I am a travel advisor. I plan travel. And so if you are someone who's thinking, yay, this is someplace I want to visit now, I'll put on my list. Let's go, let's start planning a trip from there. I can do that. I can plan trips to other parts of the world too. Eastern Europe, like I say, is one of my favorite places to visit. There's so much life there, so much excitement there, and so much change too. Unlike some of the other cities in the world that have been kind of their old stodgy selves for a while, this is a place that has changed a lot. So again, here's a closer in of that picture, the river, the fortress. So in terms of the work that I do with people, I've just listed the two extremes here, and there can be in between. So if you say, I hate planning travel, I want you to do everything, I can do that. So I can plan all the details from door to door, literally meaning walking out the door of your house and coming back inside your house. So like your airport transportation, even for your home airport, and then all the things like museum reservations, dinner reservations, anything like that, I can take care of that. Of course, that involves a lot of my time. So I do charge a fee. I have an hourly rate that I charge for things like that. On the other extreme, if you're someone who says, oh, I have everything down, I can do everything, I'm just interested in you looking at a couple of hotels. I can find like 3 or 4 hotels to look into, give you a quote. Usually that takes me 15 minutes, so it's not much of my time. So instead of charging you a planning fee for that, I just kind of let that go as no planning fee. I would get paid. I do get paid commission by the hotel, so I do get something for that. But since it's not much of my time, then I wouldn't charge a fee. Of course, there's in-betweens, right? So someone might say, I can take care of the flights, I can take care of the airport transportation, but once I get there, I want an itinerary when I get there. I want hotels. So I wouldn't charge as much a fee as I would for this, but I'd still charge a fee for that. You see, there's kind of gray areas in between those two extremes. Now, anytime you use me for travel planning or trip planning, I always give you the first 30 minutes free. And that kind of gives you an idea of, do I want to do this trip? Do I want to work with this person? And that gives you an almost an out in a sense. But what I also want to add is every trip, the first 30 minutes are free because that still gives you the idea of kind of talking it over with me about, is this the place I want to go or not? And then if you decide not and you decide not to travel, you're not out any money that way. So yes, your first trip has the first 30 minutes free. Your second trip has the first 30 minutes free. Your 10th trip will have the first 30 minutes free just because I think that's a better way to get you into maybe planning something that might be a little bit more obscure and slightly out of your comfort zone. So that's what I do. And this is who I am. We're once again back on Scadarlia Street. You can see here you have the nice seating, you have the plants there, people are sitting in the cafes, there's some lights. I don't know if it's Christmas when this picture was taken. There's the Serbian flag, and you see the lights are all sorts of different colors. So it's just a fun atmosphere and vibe. And so here's my contact information if you were interested in talking to me or using my travel services, I'd be happy to help you out. My phone number is there. It can be texted as well. My email address is there. Send me an email anytime. And there I have my Instagram handle, so you can find me there. I post several days per week, sometimes every day. So, thank you for taking the time to learn about Belgrade with me. I really appreciate that. And talk to you next month.